What's up, YouTubers? Welcome back to the channel. Hope everyone's doing well out there. For today's video, I wanted to do a quick story time regarding my vintage guitar journey. So let's go. So before we dive into the main part of today's video, I want to make a quick assumption. And that assumption is at one point or another, we have all played a vintage guitar, right? This doesn't mean Holy Grail Fenders, Golden Era Gibsons, etc. Maybe more accessible models, right? Maybe 60s or late 60s, 70s era Gibson, Norlin era Gibson, maybe 70s Fenders, right? Lawsuit type guitars like Greco, Tokais, etc. If vintage guitars really interest you, then I'm sure you also seek them out whenever you can. So that being said, let's dive into story time. So now the fun part. How did I acquire this? My Holy Grail dream guitar, a 1964 Gibson ES335. Wasn't as simple as going on Reverb and searching that and pressing buy now. It was quite a journey. Vintage guitars, have always interested me. And the first time I really had time with one, I was very spoiled because I got to spend time with a 59 Les Paul Standard. The guitar that all of our guitar heroes have played. And that was my first introduction. Again, very spoiled. That was around 2016, 2017, I believe. 2018, right, I moved here to Los Angeles, where I've been ever since. And vintage guitars are much more accessible, than they were, for example, when I was living in Boston. And prior to that, when I was living in Virginia. In Los Angeles, you have Normans, Guitar Center Hollywood, True Tone, Imperial Vintage. Vintage guitars are part of the guitar scene here in Los Angeles. So it became more, again, accessible. But that's not where it starts. It starts by playing them. Having friends who were gracious enough to let me put my hands on them, whether it was pre-CBS Fender, late 60s Fenders, a couple Golden Era Gibsons, and that was pretty much my interest, right? I'm a Gibson person since the beginning. I love Gibson guitars because, my two guitar heroes played them primarily, Jimmy Page and Eric Clapton, right? Clapton playing a 335 just like this. So as time went on and I understood and felt the differences between modern reissues versus their original pieces, that's when it's sort of, the light bulb moment happens and you realize vintage guitars are very special. And throughout the time, I would make an effort to go to the local stores, right? Check the website, watch Guitar of the Day on Norman's YouTube channel, check out the Imperial Vintage Instagram page. And whenever an instrument would come up, I would make an effort to go see it, play it, knowing that I couldn't buy it, obviously. And I would tell the staff, I can't afford this, but I would love to see it just to check it out, see how it feels, how it plays, etc. one thing that I really want to stress is that you can't go into this vintage world with preconceived notions, right? In essence, no two guitars are better than each other, but maybe one you prefer, one resonates with you the most, one inspires you the most, and that's the guitar that you choose, right? So if you choose vintage or reissue, it's okay. The most important part is that you're playing guitar. So whenever I'd see these guitars online, I made an effort to go check them out. And in 2022 fall, that's when, it sort of hit me that I really wanted to do my best to try and get a vintage guitar. Now, as a lot of you guys know, I was very fortunate enough to have my hands on the 2016 PRS John Mayer Super Eagle, right? And looking at the prices in fall 2022, it became pretty obvious that if I wanted a vintage Gibson, I would have to sell that guitar, right? Obviously, not as simple as just putting it for sale. It's also a lot of sentimental value behind that guitar for me. That was a great guitar. But stepping back from all that, looking at what do I think will be a better piece long run, right? What piece do I want to carry on for as long as possible? And that ended up being a vintage Gibson. Looking at the prices of both the Super Eagle and vintage Gibsons, it became pretty obvious I really had one area of focus, right? And thankfully, it was the guitar that I wanted, a 64 Cherry Red ES335. And that's when the journey really starts. I put my guitar for sale. I put on Instagram, got a ton of messages and DMs about people interested in pricing, specs, photos, etc., which is great. But maybe approaching it too soon, I haven't had enough time with a 335 at that point, right? So a part of me was like, if I can sell this guitar fast, the Super Eagle, fantastic. I have the funds for the 335. Another part of me was like, I don't know what to look for, right? If I'm willing to compromise, a headstock repair or a refret, am I okay with that? I want all original electronics, but will I be okay with a refret? Right? That's the small details really matter and they really dictate the price. So the search was on. Surprisingly enough, I don't know how the world aligned, but in November 22 until like January 2023, it seemed like there was a Cherry Red 335 with block inlays anywhere in Los Angeles. But that didn't mean they were good ones, right? In the couple months, after November, I played about 15 to 20 335 60s versions. 62, 63, 64. I think the earliest I played was a 61, but that was too high for me because it had PAFs. But the journey began and I was getting my hands on them, seeing what I liked, what I didn't like, the sound of the pickups, different versions of these same guitars. One sounds good, the other one, plays better. One's all original. The other one had a headstock repair, but other than that, all original. I played one that had a Maestro Vibrola, all original, And then I would realize to myself, for example, this one with the Maestro, way too clean. It looked brand new, this guitar. I wasn't comfortable with that, I'm a player, not a collector. And that's another aspect, I'm going to play these every single day for lessons, for YouTube videos. I want the guitar that's best for me. So playing a lot, trying a lot. 2023 comes by, still playing them, but I'm not making an effort because I sort of died down the energy that I had. But in the back of my mind, if one became available, right, I would still do my best to go check it out because you never know. I think it was summer 2023. I played a really great 64 Sunburst that belonged to Adam Levy at a recording session. And that was like, okay, let's get back on this journey because now I got the bug again. 2023 finishes, 2024 comes along, and that's when, as a lot of you know, go time. It starts in February 2024. NAMM had just finished, and then the Three Amigos Guitar Show happens in Costa Mesa, right? And my dear friend Eduardo, he purchases a 63 ES335 Sunburst with PAFs, incredible condition. I was obviously in love with that guitar, but one thing changed that I wasn't able to do while playing the prior guitars. And that was to have the 335 in my environment, right, in my apartment. So when Eduardo came with his 63 335, I plugged it into my Deluxe Reverb. That was like, okay, I need to do something right now. I need a 335, right? And that's, again, go time. At the same time, almost over. At the same time, Willie's American Guitars posts this guitar on a YouTube video. I look at the price. I look at the price of my PRS Super Eagle. You know, they're very close. Very, very close. Text it to my buddy Taylor. He sends it to his partner, Drew Berlin, and the rest is history. Drew helped so much in the purchase and the communication with this guitar. And as you all know, May 7th, 2024, my ES335 arrives at my doorstep. And I mean, look at it. It's so good. It's my dream guitar. And the journey took a while, about 2 years almost, right? And that's okay. It doesn't have to be you go on Reverb, go to the guitar show, and buy instantly. It takes time. And remember, it takes time finding a guitar that's best for you. Not the one that'll get the most Instagram likes or the most follows. It has to resonate with you. So with that being said, the next part I want to talk about that I get a lot of questions of is the feel versus reissue and vintage. It comes down to two analogies that I have. The first being, imagine you had a long day at work with your dress shoes and you come back home and you put on your house slippers, right? The second analogy is you just bought a new pair of jeans, they're stiff, and when you go to your old pair of jeans, they fit you perfectly, right? They're much more worn in, they've had hole repairs, you know, they're a bit damaged, they're loose because they stretched a bit, they fit you perfect. And that's the difference. They're both great products, vintage and reissues, but the vintage ones just feel better. Yes, they have the magic around them, right? But not every vintage guitar is a good guitar. But when you find the right one, I really do believe it's like putting your old best pair of jeans on. It feels like home. You feel the most comfortable, the most inspired, and ultimately you want to play the guitar as long as possible. And that for me is the main difference. The last thing I want to talk about is how can you do it, right? Yes, I was lucky to have, you know, this token of a Super Eagle that was high valued over time, right? That was my entryway for the money for this guitar. But looking back, it's maybe easier said than done, right? I guess the first part is you have to really be committed to be in the vintage market, right? Especially if you're like me, I'm 30 years old, young, right? Reissue guitars are equally as expensive as the vintage ones, sometimes the same price, right? Murphy Labs can get up to $20,000, right? That's insane, not accessible for us normal people. But if there's one tip that I would say is just go for it, right? If you want to be in the vintage market, go for it. Look at your collection and realize, right? Those are all assets. All those modern guitars that you have, you can easily replace. And I tell that to friends all the time. You want a vintage 63 Strat? You know, there's one local here in Los Angeles for sale for a good price. Look at your collection. Do you need 3 master-built Fenders? Do you need 4 amplifiers from the same manufacturer? Do you need 3 2x12 cabinets, right? Are you okay with getting rid of all that to get a holy grail piece, right? The modern stuff you can get again tomorrow, right? You can get another 2-Rock, you can get another deluxe reverb, you can get Murphy Lab Gibson, a custom shop Strat, right? But the odds of finding you a 63 Strat in great condition, that's much harder to do. So once again, if you want to get into vintage, you can do it. It takes time. Do it right. Don't rush it. And like me, ultimately, you'll hopefully end up with your dream instrument. Well, all right, guys, that is today's video, a quick story time on my vintage guitar journey. If you enjoyed today's video, please leave a like, comment, and subscribe. And let me know in the comments below if you have a vintage guitar, and if not, what is your dream vintage guitar? With all that being said, I'll see you in the next video.